Thank you, Lara, and welcome everyone to this webinar. I'm really excited to share the information about some snakes in Florida with you. Something I would like to warn you all about before we go through, if you are one of the people who is really afraid of snakes or does not really like snakes and is here just to learn about them, I would encourage you to minimize the screen and just listen to me. There will be lots of images on snakes in this presentation. I think that generally goes without saying, but I do like to give that kind of warning out. That way, in case you're one of those people, you don't, panic when a big picture of a snake pops up on your screen. So just keep that in mind. We are going to be learning some identification today. So the first thing we're going to talk about are going to be some of the species of snakes we have here in Florida, including which ones are venomous. We're also going to be talking about snake behavior and how we should be cognizant of that behavior to reduce our chances of getting injured from a snake and also reduce our chances of encountering them if we don't want to. Then we're going to talk about landscaping for snake exclusion, also known as snake proofing. I would like to caveat that with you cannot really snake proof your yard, but you can definitely reduce chances of having snakes in your yard. And then what to do in an emergency. So in Florida, we have 46 species of native snakes. If you've been paying attention to the news in the past year or so, you may be aware that we also have several varieties of invasive exotic snakes currently residing within the state. We're not going to talk about those today. We had a special webinar. Our first one was on invasive exotic reptiles, and if you're interested in seeing that webinar, it is available in recorded format, and I'll send that link out with you later. But first, we're going to have our first poll question, and this question is, how many venomous snakes are found in Florida? So if everyone would just go ahead and give your guess there, we can wait until we get a good number and then close it out. All right, so that's pretty good. That's about 2/3 of the people. Lara, if you want to go ahead and close that poll question. All right, good job, everyone. Most of you got that answer correct. We have 6 species of venomous snakes in Florida. But what we're going to talk about primarily today are snakes that can be found in Central Florida, because that's where Lara and I are located. But most of these snakes can be found throughout the state. There are just a few that are really happier in the very, very tippy top of Florida when you're getting closer to Georgia and Alabama, and then a few snakes that are primarily found in very South Florida. So in Central Florida, we have 35 of the 46 species of snakes, but only 4 of the 6 venomous snakes. We do not have the timber rattler or the copperhead. Both of those are found in the very, very north section of the state, and the copperhead is actually only found in about 3 counties of Florida, and even then it's a rare snake to see. It's really not a huge fan of the rest of the state there. So take solace in that. If you live in Central Florida, you don't have to deal with those 2 primarily northern snakes. So the way that we're going to be discussing identification today is really based on an identification book that the University of Florida is publishing, and that book, there's a link to it in your snake resources. It's the link all the way at the bottom. It's the Snake Identification Guide. It splits identifying the 46 snakes into these patterns. And so we're going to go through pattern by pattern and really discuss some of the snakes you might find in each one. Snakes are identified by their most obvious markings in this book. And so while a snake may have blotches and bands or stripes, it's the one that sticks out the most. So the most prominent feature is the one that we are going to use for identification. So the first one on this list is your eastern diamondback rattlesnake. It is the only species that has a distinct diamond pattern within the Central Florida area. Again, if you're in other parts of the country, you might see other snakes with a diamond pattern, but here in Central Florida, you're really only going to see the eastern diamondback rattlesnake. It is venomous, and here is a picture of him. He can look very intimidating. He may or may not make a rattling noise that you can audibly hear. We are seeing some snakes that either don't have a rattle because of predation or are choosing not to display their rattle in hopes that you won't notice them and will leave them alone. This is the common strike pattern or position that he's in right here, but you can see all around his back there the diamond pattern going on, and he is venomous. So the next variety we're going to talk about are blotched snakes. We have another poll question before I go into it. So of the snakes displayed here, which one is venomous? Or which of them are venomous? I should say. All right, we'll wait just, okay, that works for me. So if we could broadcast those results. Most of you got the answer correct. The venomous snake on this slide is snake A. Snake A is your pygmy rattlesnake, and snake B is your black racer. So a lot of people aren't familiar with the juvenile pattern of the black racer, but when he's a little guy, up until about the size of 2 to 3 feet, he will have this blotchy pattern behind him. And the way that you can really tell the difference between the two of them is the racer has a very slim, slender body, and the pygmy rattler has a much heavier set, bulkier body to him. He also has your distinctive rattlesnake head, which has a dark band that runs under the eye and a spade-shaped or heart-shaped head. And we'll talk about that some more later. From a distance, you're going to be primarily looking at body shape and the shape of the eye and whether or not he looks angry. In my opinion, most of our venomous snakes have this really sassy, angry look to them with their dark eye bands, whereas our non-venomous snakes have these big, bright, round eyes, and they just look like a nice snake, if there is such a thing, in your opinion. So of these blotched snakes, we have a lot of variety here in the state of Florida. Again, the black racer is a prime example of a snake that will change pattern over time. We also have the common garter snake, the hognose snake. So this one right here, this is your eastern hognose snake. They stay pretty small, but he's got a very distinct uptick in his nose at the end. So you'll see that cute little snout that turns up, and that's what gets him his name of the hognose snake. This is a relatively fun species we'll talk about a little bit more later. But as you can see, he also has a similar pattern to our pygmy rattlesnake, and a lot of our native snakes do this. They imitate the more venomous cousins that they have in hopes that they will not be eaten by other predators. But he has that big blotchy appearance on his back, and that cute little upturned nose. The next one that I'm showing you here, this is a Florida pine snake. These snakes get a little bit larger than the hognose snake. You can see these up to about 4 feet in size, whereas the hognose will really stay around 2 feet as a maximum. If you look at the pattern on the back of the pine snake, you can see he's got this blotchy reddish shape to him. It really fits in well when you think about where these snakes might be hiding. In a piney flatwoods, you might have a lot of pine bark on the ground. He might be climbing a tree, and that pattern really helps them stay hidden there. I do want to mention with all of these snake species, their color can vary, either due to the time of year before or after they've recently shed their skin, or during their age, like we discussed with pattern. So this pine snake, this is a pretty light colored pine snake. And then this one right here is your adult Florida eastern black racer. He is distinguished from another one of our snakes that we're going to talk later because of his white chin there. So just as an adult, he's your regular old shiny black racer that people have come to know and love. Very common snake in Florida. So banded snakes, we've got another question here. This is another popular question that I get in my office. Which of the snakes displayed here is the venomous coral snake? This one's a little tricky. And Lara, let's not broadcast the results until we close it. All right, we'll get just a couple more responses. Wonderful, that should be good. All right, so most of you got this question right. The answer is actually B. They are not the same snake, and they are not both venomous. The one on the left is your scarlet king snake, and the one on the right, snake B, is your coral snake. If anyone's learned about these snakes in school, they were most frequently taught a rhyme to remember it. Yellow on black, friend of Jack, red on yellow, kill a fellow. There's all kinds of ways you can say that rhyme, and for that reason I do not recommend using that rhyme as a way to identify these snakes. They're actually pretty easy to identify in the field. As you can see, the scarlet king snake is pretty bright in color, whereas our coral snake is a little more muted. He's a very secretive snake who likes to hide in cool, dark places, so having a darker color set to him does help him avoid some predators. But the easiest way to identify him is that black snout he's got. He's got a very blunt, rounded head. It almost looks like he doesn't have a head. And that little black nose up into his eyes. Those are the most common features for identifying them. They also have a little black spray paint pattern over the red sections on their body, and that's what gives them that darker, more easily hidden persona there. But our king snakes are trying their best to look like the coral snake so other snakes don't mess with them and other critters. So the band snakes, these are stripes or bands that go across the body, not the length of the body. The length of the body is going to be your striped snakes. Across the body are your banded snakes. And so we just have a few species of them here in Florida. The banded water snake, the scarlet king snake, scarlet snake, common king snake. All of these are lookalikes for our two venomous banded snakes. So the coral snake, all the king snakes and the scarlet snake are trying to look like the coral snake, and the banded water snake, the green water snake, the Florida water snake, they're all trying to look like the water moccasin. And we will talk about the water moccasin a little bit more in just a minute. But first we're going to go on to the striped snakes. So the eastern ribbon snake is a great example, but one that people are more commonly familiar with are your common garter snakes. This one is a rat snake. It is, I believe this one is the Everglades rat snake, which tends to have a yellowish color to him. But rat snakes can vary in color from red to brown to ashen gray. All different colors our rat snakes come in. They're also known as corn snakes. They're the same snake species. This is the one in the bottom left-hand corner is your common garter snake. As you can see, he's got a checkerboard pattern, but the most prominent feature is that big yellow stripe that goes down the length of his body. And they're smaller than your average rat snake and are commonly found in the yard. Very friendly snakes. They like to run away, I promise. But as you can see, both of these snakes are great examples of how you can see that rounded, friendly-looking eye from pretty far away. So even if you were several feet away from these snakes, you would more than likely be able to see that they do not have the venomous-shaped eye of the slitted pupil. Again, though, these snakes, there are no lengthwise striped snakes that are considered venomous. So if you have a striped snake, you can just go ahead and be calm about it because they are not going to injure you significantly. Something I'd like to bring up real quick about the coral snake, he does have rounded eyes, but they're very, very tiny, and they're in that black area. So just real quick, wanted to bring that up. All right. So our solid color snakes, I've waited to talk about the water moccasin until we got to solid color snakes because like our black racer, they can change pattern over time. Unlike the black racer, the cottonmouth does not actually change pattern so much as get darker in color the older it gets. And so young cottonmouths will have a yellow appearance to them. They'll slowly turn a brownish, muddy green color. They may maintain a yellow tail for a little bit, but overall they will stay, they will get darker and darker as time goes on, but they do have bands. We have so many solid color snakes in the state of Florida, but one I'd like to bring up is the eastern indigo snake. I've listed it here in purple because it does have a purplish bluish tint to its shiny black scales. This is one of our largest snakes in the state. He can get quite large, up to about 6 feet. And he'll have a little red chin. So where our black racer has a white chin, the eastern indigo snake tends to have a little pink or reddish chin to him. Sometimes it's white in color, but he's a heavier snake than the black racer. So this one right here, this is our red belly mud snake. And this brings up an interesting pattern. If you look at the underside over by his tail, he's got a very distinctive red and black checkerboard pattern to him. But the prominent feature, especially when found in nature, because he is a snake that prefers to be near water, you really won't see that checkerboard pattern. So his primary identifying feature is that long, dark coloration to him. He's very shiny and very pretty. So this is again your black racer. Imagine for your eastern indigo snakes, I don't have a great picture of them, that the color on the body will be darker, almost purpley black, if you know what I'm talking about. You can see that sometime in ladies' hair as well, that might have a blue tint to it when it's dark like that. The eastern indigo is iridescent like that. And it will have a little spot on his chin, a little patch like the black racer, but it will be reddish pink instead of white most of the time. This bright green snake right here, he's the rough green snake. Very pretty, very long, skinny snake. He actually isn't that long in total length. He tops out about 3 feet if memory serves correct. But he's a very pretty, thin snake, and I would love to see one of those in person someday. And this last one I'm going to show you here looks kind of like an eastern pine snake, except he does not have the patches that help him blend into the pine bark there. This is your smooth earth snake. And this snake will top out about 15 inches. He's relatively small. And as you can see, his coloration really helps him be camouflaged in Florida's natural areas. So that's just a small sample of some of the solid colored snakes we have here in Florida, but we really, truly, this is the largest category of snakes. There are so many, and their colors do shift, like I said, over the years and by individual. So now we're going to talk a little more specifically about the cottonmouth or the water moccasin. They're the same snake. Fun fact, the scientific name for the cottonmouth actually translates to swimming fish eater or water-bodied fish eater, and so that gives you a hint as to what their primary source of food is. They're found all over the southeastern United States, and in my experience are definitely the most feared snake that we have here in Florida. I don't hear too many people encountering or being afraid of rattlesnakes as much as I hear about water moccasins. I think the rattlesnakes are in areas that just tend to have less people in them, and that's why I hear less about them. But these snakes will often be found in a wetland or in vegetation right next to water. They really do stay close to water though, because they are a semi-aquatic pit viper species. They hunt fish, and so when your prey source is in water, you won't be found too far away. Sometimes you'll see them farther away if they're looking for a mate or transitioning to a different aquatic environment. They're also rarely found out in the middle of a lake or river. They are not a species that hunts out in open water. If you see them in the middle of a lake, it's most likely because they are swimming from one side to the other side for some reason. What they tend to do is corner their prey in shallow water up against tree roots or something, and then strike out at it. And that's what they use their venom for, is to actually stun the fish that they're about to eat. And a lot of their bites are actually considered dry bites, where no venom is actually injected into the animal or the person they're attacking. And so having a dry bite is just something to be cognizant of. If you're a person and you're bitten, I still strongly recommend seeking medical attention, but it might help calm you down just a little bit. So if you're in a forest that you know has ephemeral ponds or seasonal wetlands, make sure that you're at least keeping an eye out for them, because as you can see with their patterned body, they would be very easy to miss or not see because they're so well camouflaged. So the water moccasin is a very heavy-bodied snake, much like the pygmy rattle and the diamondback. It's because they're all in the same snake family. This is in the pit viper family. They tend to be 1 to 4 pounds and under 4 feet, but trust me, they do get much, much larger. The largest one I've seen in person is probably closer to 5 feet, but I routinely hear about snakes larger than that. And the diamondback rattlesnake, for instance, can get 6 feet or over, and so it's just part of this family. They do have that very heavy look to them, and they're named for cottonmouth. If you look at the open mouth there, it's very, very light pink and white in there, and so that's how they get their name. They really do vary in color from brown, black, and green. It's often muddy colors, think of it that way. Their bands are going to be in darker colors going across the body. And the young cottonmouths will have a yellowish color to them. We do have some snakes that look very, very similar to them. That is the Florida green water snake and the banded water snake. And that is our question for today. So which of the two snakes shown here is the venomous water moccasin? I made this one easier for you guys by talking about them first. Wonderful. Okay, that's probably pretty good, Lara. All right, so most of you got it correct. A is your cottonmouth or water moccasin as it's known. The snake on the right side is a Florida banded water snake. And the way that you can really tell the difference is, again, by looking at the shape of the head. And this, I picked these pictures because they're going away from you. Most of our snakes' first instinct will be to flee given the option. So they will be trying to leave you. But on the off chance you really need to know which snake you just saw, as you can see in this top left-hand picture, it really does have that spade or heart-shaped head with those large jowls or sides to his head there. Whereas your Florida banded water snake, you can see, just has a nice little rounded face there. And in this coloration, it is difficult to see the different shape to the eyes, but in person, after you start looking at pictures of these two snakes next to each other, it'll be easier for you to identify them in the field if possible. So snake behavior. So now we're going to talk a little bit about thinking like a snake, and we've got another poll question for you in just a second. So when we talk about snake bites, that's when most people are really and truly afraid of snakes. People don't like the way they move, they think they're kind of creepy, but ultimately they're terrified they're going to get bitten by these snakes. And it's not unreasonable. Hollywood and folklore have definitely led this to being a genuine fear among a lot of people. But most of these bites occur when people try to harass, catch, or kill the snakes. They also tend to happen in spring or summer in the western United States, but I'm going to go ahead and make an assumption that that's because more people are out during the spring or summer in the western United States, and they also have a lot of more variety in venomous snakes. And so there's, for instance, I believe in Arizona, there's over 15 species of rattlesnakes, like just rattlesnakes. So they have a lot more venomous snakes to be concerned with out there. But for our question today, in an average year, how many deaths are caused by snake bites in the entire United States? Again, on average. All right, we'll just wait for a couple more people. Oh, no, it's okay. You can close it, actually. All right. Well, we've got a runoff between 1 to 2 or 5 to 6. The answer is 5 to 6 deaths a year from snake bites. And so when we're talking about an entire nation of people, that is an extremely small number of people who die from snake bites every year. It is very tragic for those that it happens to, but it's something that honestly we probably shouldn't fear as much as we do as a culture. And so learning a little bit about snake behavior can really help us avoid that possibility. Most of these emergency room visits are involving males in the ages of 17 to 27, and more often than not also include alcohol. And so these are statistics that are taken on emergency room visits related to snake bites. Just something to think about. All right, so nationwide, these are some of the unfortunate ways that people in our country pass on, and I wanted to really bring your attention to the fact that on this chart, even bee stings and dog bites are higher than snake bites, and so you're much more likely to encounter a bee, wasp, or hornet, or even a rogue dog than you are a venomous snake in the state of Florida. And so a lot of those hornet, bee, or wasp stings are, those deaths probably also are associated with having an allergy to the hornet, bee, or wasp. But it's just something to keep in mind that there are a lot of other more frequent ways that we should be afraid of things happening. Like, for instance, you're 10 times more likely to die from a lightning strike, and Central Florida is the lightning strike capital, I believe, of the state and possibly the Southeast. So snakes are something that are very much feared in our culture, and it's to our benefit to really help people understand this little critter and value it. So snakes only have two defenses. They can flee or they can bite you. And let's think about this if it was a squirrel. If you went up and tried to hit a squirrel or grab a squirrel and pick it up, what would it most likely do? It'd probably start scratching you, probably make some noises. Eventually it would bite you, and it would try to leave. Now snakes don't have arms and legs, so really all they can do is bite you. And it's just something to keep in mind. We want to give them the option to run away when they can. And so some of our snakes do have a third option. They will try to pretend that they are dead. This lovely little snake is an eastern hognose snake. If you remember to the beginning, these have the cute little upturned nose. They have this funny way of playing dead and hoping that you leave them alone. They will come right back to life and slither away about 15 minutes after the threat has left them. But for the most part, all snakes can do is run away or bite you. So to avoid a bite, if you accidentally stumble upon a snake, say around your house when you move the garbage can or in your garage, the best thing you can do is to back away slowly and give it an exit route. And then if you're in a garage or something and you have a way to move something on the opposite side of the exit route, so say there's a pile of boxes behind the snake and you've got your garage door open, maybe use a broom or something to like knock those boxes to scare it out of the corner and have it leave the way. So this is ironically enough, this is the same advice we give for bears. So you want to back away slowly, make sure there's an exit route, and try as hard as possible to remain calm. If you're out in the woods or you're hiking, you can always wear protective shoes, socks, and pants. Most of these snakes, if you happen to accidentally step on them, cannot bite very high on your leg because their bodies are only so long. But keep in mind that snakes can strike up to 2/3 of their body length. So if you've got a snake that you're trying to kill because you think that that's the best way to deal with this situation, keep in mind that some of our larger snakes can strike 4 or 5 feet. And then think about how long the handle on your shovel is. Most snake bites occur on the hand, so it's just something to keep in mind. Maybe instead of killing the snake, try and help it get scared away, and then if you're concerned about it being in your area, hire a professional trapper to come back and get it for you. So preventing encounters in your yard or your home, the best thing to do is to try and think like a snake. So look for food, shelter, cover, and get rid of them. These are the best ways to eliminate snakes from your yard or neighborhood. Some examples of this are keeping firewood away from the home, removing debris piles, and removing prey habitat. So when we're talking about prey, most of these snakes eat things like frogs, lizards, other things that like water. things that eat rotten fruit in your yard. And so keeping habitat down, like mowing grass, keeping vegetation around your home well maintained, meaning keeping your shrubs up off the ground a few inches, using rock adjacent to your home, similar to the fire-wise behaviors, and really making sure that you don't have a lot of dead vegetation on the ground can really help snake-proof your yard. If you live in an area that's adjacent to a wetland, you might consider putting up some silt fencing to exclude the snakes from that wetland area from getting into your yard. I do want to emphasize this is a last effort. This can be expensive. It's not particularly attractive to look at, but it can be done effectively. And if you have interest in doing that, you can always look with the Dealing with Snakes in Residential Areas resources that we've linked below. They have all kinds of information. So you also want to rodent proof your yard. A lot of these snakes will also eat rodents, and so you'll want to get rid of overripe fruit on the ground, keep all pet food in tightly closed containers, keep basements and attics clutter-free. Don't give them a place to hide. Make sure that you hire a pest control or trapper to remove rodents that you are not successful in getting rid of. And just as a personal aside, I would recommend avoid using poison. A lot of the rodent poisons that are on the market today result in the rodent going outside and dying there, which is great because they don't die in your home, but they then become food for a lot of our carrion birds like vultures and ospreys and eagles, which given a food shortage, or eagles especially will definitely go after dead animals, you're then in turn, there's a chance that you could be poisoning them as well. And so rodent proof, you are allowed technically to poison rats, and rats only. You're not allowed to use poison for anything else. You can, in the state of Florida that is. There are other things to try first, but yeah, you can use poison if you have no other option there. You also want to snake-proof your home, garage, or shed. This is a red rat snake going in through a drainage pipe on a patio. So the way that you can prevent that scenario is to cover that drainage pipe with some screening and then zip tie it down, or use some sealant of some kind to attach a screen to the end of the pipe. Other ways or other places you might want to check are AC conduits, holes around cable entry or power line entry into your home. Just make sure to fill those areas. It's the same type of stuff you want to do to prevent rodents or other critters from getting into and under your home. And so just maintaining those will really help you out. Snakes, especially the little ones, can squeeze into really tiny locations, so you really want to make sure that you are closing off all possible entryways to your home. Some snakes are quite proficient climbers, so you'll want to remove those overhanging tree limbs from your home as well. So emergency preparedness. The first thing you need to do is have a plan before you need it. This is standard emergency preparedness for anything. Have a plan. Go over the plan with your family so that in case you're the one bitten, they know what to do. This is really important in helping everyone stay calm in an emergency. If you're going hiking in an area unfamiliar to you, hiking, camping, vacationing, whatever, make sure your friends know the plan too, because I don't know about you, but with my luck, if I know the plan, I'm definitely the one that's going to get bitten. So make sure you tell your friends and family, and if your family is one of the families that likes to be really organized, have a little card with the emergency phone numbers you need to call. You need to have those phone numbers handy. The first one's going to be your local emergency medical. So if you're able to, you can call 911. If you have a specific doctor you want to go to, call that doctor, but have those numbers ready. If you are concerned that you were bitten by a venomous snake, if you've learned what those look like and you're pretty confident on which one it is, because remember there's only 4 here, so it either is a coral snake or a pit viper. Those are the 2 types of anti-venom that the hospital will need to know. So your second phone number you're going to want to have is poison control. They can help coordinate that anti-venom. So some do's and don'ts. These are to overcome some of the emergency preparedness rules of past. For instance, please do not apply a tourniquet to a bitten extremity. You just want to keep that extremity lower than the heart. Again, it's usually going to be a hand. Keep it lower than the heart and do not make an incision and try to suck out the venom. It doesn't work, and it can often lead to trying to treat the wound yourself rather than seeking medical attention. Again, the best thing you can do is learn how to identify those venomous snakes and make sure that you are confident that you might have been bitten by one of those. Seek medical attention before you see symptoms, and do not try to treat it yourself. Just keep the victim calm, wash the area to keep out any bacteria that's possible, and remove anything that might act like a tourniquet, like bracelets, rings, watches, belts, etc. Whatever it is, just try to keep the area with a lower heart rate. Also, don't handle a dead snake. A lot of these snakes bite on reflex, and so a snake like a rattlesnake can actually bite you for several hours after it's been killed. And it's dead. It's not that it's alive and biting out of revenge. It's that its mouth operates on a reflex just like your knees do. And so you can see bites after the fact. So in conclusion, we have 36 varieties of native snakes in Central Florida, but only 4 of them are venomous, and they're very easy to identify with a little bit of practice. The chance of being bitten by a venomous snake is very, very small, but it's best to leave them all alone and not try to handle, kill, or trap them yourself. Please hire a professional. These snakes play a vital role in our ecosystems in keeping pest species like large insects, rodents, and other unwanted urban critters out of your area, so it's nice to let the snakes do their thing. And if bitten, call 911 immediately, then the Poison Control Center. And last but not least, snakes are a fascinating and important species, and yeah, spread the word. Help tell your friends that it's super interesting. So I'll answer some questions right now, but because we're getting close on time, I'm going to go ahead and put this up. If everyone could please fill out the feedback survey and the top link right here, you can go ahead and click on that on the screen to take our evaluation. And I just wanted to say that because we're getting close to time. All right, Lara, would you like to lead me through some questions?
Sure. It's been quite a busy chat box, which is always nice. I
can see it blinking down.
So I think I've pretty much answered all of the questions along the way, but for the sake of time, let's just focus on a few. So one of the questions was asking if the diamondback rattlesnakes can be reddish in color, and I mentioned that they pretty much tend to look exactly like the image that you had on the screen. I'm not aware of them ever being reddish in color unless you have something.
No, they tend to be that very distinct gold and black color. The timber rattler can have a copperish color to him, but again, he's only found in the North Panhandle of Florida. If you're outside of Florida, I can't answer that question adequately.
Okay, and then we had a question about the difference between a dry bite and a poisonous bite, and I indicated that either way you should seek medical attention because the bacteria from the fangs could be an issue whether it was injected into you or not. And then I shared some of the information from the UF website about just some statistics on dry bites versus venomous bites.
Yes, and then you brought up a great point. Always seek medical attention because you might not be able to tell if it was a dry bite or not. It's probably going to be irritated anyhow. Just because it's a dry bite does not mean it doesn't hurt. So if you think if you're even slightly concerned that it might have been a venomous snake, definitely seek medical attention as soon as physically possible. Something to note with coral snakes, though, they really, really need to chew on you to get that venom in there. They have a very, very tiny mouth. They don't have the traditional fangs that everyone thinks of. So they really need to break skin, and that's difficult for them to do. They're also very small snakes, and so you're very unlikely to get bitten by a coral snake in such a way that it would be able to deliver venom. But just out of safety's sake, if you were bitten on the skin by any of these snakes and you don't know if it was a venomous snake, definitely seek medical attention.
Okay, thank you. And then there was a question about, I understand, they were saying, I understand that sucking the venom out is a myth. Is that true? to do that.
Yes, that is a myth. So we do not want you to try and suck the venom out for multiple reasons. It's probably not going to work. We don't want to encourage people sharing bodily fluids like that. Just in general, that's a dangerous thing to do. And while venom needs to be injected into the skin to actually harm you, you could technically drink venom if you have no cuts in your mouth or your internal tract. If you have no cuts, you could swallow it and you'd be just fine. But we don't recommend that because the likelihood of you having no cuts is very, very slim. Lots of people have tiny little micro cuts on their cheeks and their internal tract, and so we don't want you to encounter venom that way also. So yeah, it's a myth. Call 911.
And then I don't know, I again pretty much answered all of the questions unless there's more that are on the chat box, but I don't know if you just want to wrap up to stay on time, or there's 2 more I could go through.
I'm going to answer one that I see talking about a product called Snake Away and mothballs, and then I will wrap up, I promise.
Sounds good.
Snake Away and mothballs are not proven to be effective in scientific academic studies. So there are lots of anecdotes out there about ways that you can prevent snakes from coming in by doing something that they're not going to like. Snake Away is not the only product on the market that doesn't have lab results from an academic source, but there are several on the market, and if they make you feel better to use them, they're not harmful to the environment in any way. They're a combination of cinnamon oils and lavender sometimes, cayenne pepper. It's all kinds of things that don't actually hurt anyone, but they might maybe dissuade a snake from coming in an area. So it won't harm your environment to use a product like Snake Away, but we also don't recommend it as a research-backed option for keeping snakes out. That's going to be your habitat modification. I will say though, using mothballs in your yard is illegal. Mothballs are a EPA regulated pesticide that are meant to be used in enclosed areas only. When they get wet, they do leak their chemical. I don't remember what the active ingredient is, but it does leak that chemical out into the environment and can possibly be detected in soil and water adjacent to an area where mothballs have been used. So we strongly recommend not using mothballs in the home if it's not in an enclosed area like a garment bag or a cedar chest, or in your yard to keep snakes away. First of all, it's been found not to be effective at snake control, but it's also releasing a pesticide into the environment in a way that it's not meant to be done. So please don't use mothballs. Other than that, I'm going to wrap up there. If I see any other questions that I didn't have time to answer, I will work those up into an email and send those all out to you. So Lara, if you'd like to finish.
Yeah, thank you. That was a good one to end on, and I'm glad you addressed that. So again, for those of you that are still on, if you wouldn't mind, if you just click on the link at the top of the screen and provide your feedback, that's very helpful to Shannon and I, and hopefully will give us information to continue and maybe do another webinar series in the future. And you can register for our last webinar of the series on coyotes in December at the link on the screen, the polknr.eventbrite.com. And again, if you guys still have any last minute questions, you can type them in the chat box, and Shannon will be sure to take a look at that, and she'll provide a response via email from the emails you provided when you registered. So thank you, Shannon, for a great presentation, and thank you all for participating, and we hope to see you in December.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Have a great week.
And happy Thanksgiving.